It's been centuries since man actually first heard the voice of another man through a telephone line. Since then, the way of communication is exponentially evolving through a wired bulky phone to smaller one until it becomes completely wireless. Now, connecting to a line to talk to someone is as easy as 1, 2, 3, then there it is. You can talk to anyone you like. With that, in this documentary, we'll bring you back to the time where it all began. Before the invention of electromagnetic telephones, mechanical acoustic devices existed for transmitting speech and music over a distance greater than that of normal direct speech. The earliest mechanical telephones were based on sound transmission through pipes or other physical media. Among the earliest known experiments were those conducted by the British physicist and polymath, which is Robert Hooke, from 1664 to 1685. An acoustic string phone made in 1667 is attributed to him to none other than Robert Hooke.
The concept of communication through electrical current was first discovered and studied during the time of Alexander Graham Bell. It was also the time where the first telephone was invented.
Mr. Alexander Graham Bell is known as the inventor of the first telephone, but contrary to popular belief, some say Mr. Bell did not come up with the idea of voice transmission through electrical current. Mr. Johann Philipp Reis successfully created his telephone in 1861, and here's how it works.
The development of telephony makes a fascinating story. There's the first transmitter. And there the receiver. The first telephone was invented by Philip Rice in 1860. These Joe Noble diagrams will show just how it was constructed. The first receiver consisted of a bar of iron and wire, a rather crude affair with definite limitations. The instrument could only transmit music, not speech, and was therefore quite useless unless you had a musical voice.
Mr. Rice's telephone failed to have its patent because it is not consistent in transmitting clear words. This made scientists believe that it has no significant use other than being a plaything. There are other inventors who preceded Bell in making the telephone. Mr. Antonio Meucci submitted a patent caveat of his telephone device in 1871, but did not succeed because Mr. Meucci did not have enough funds. Some say that the materials and the use of the diaphragm in Bell's telephone is based on Meucci's telephone. Another inventor related to the first telephone is Mr. Elisha Gray. Mr. Gray did not tell anybody about his invention until the 14th of February in 1876, when he is about to file his patent, but was too late since Mr. Bell filed his patent 2 hours earlier on the same day. On March 10, 1876, Mr. Bell was granted a patent for his telephone. Mr. Bell, along with his assistant, Mr. Watson, tested the telephone, and the first words uttered through the telephone were, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." It is unclear which version of Mr. Bell's invention was used in this trial. It is either the liquid transmitter telephone, which makes use of liquid to change the resistance when the attached wire makes contact. The resulting current variations in the listening device reproduce the original sound. The other model is known as the Centennial transmitter, which came after and is an improvement of the liquid transmitter. This is how it works.
Sound waves travel in through the mouthpiece, hit the diaphragm, which vibrates and makes contact with an electromagnet inside an iron cylinder. This turns the vocal vibrations into a changing electrical signal which flows through the wire to be turned back into sounds at the other end. This formed the basis for how telephones would work for the next 100 years.
Whether it was the liquid transmitter or the Centennial transmitter, we know that Mr. Bell successfully transmitted speech through his telephone.
The world's first long-distance telephone line. So the gold rush is widely recognized as the magnet that drew millions of settlers to California, in addition to hundreds of popularized stories of settlers getting rich or bust. A variety of inventions were created in order to better serve the miners and the miners. Of those inventions was the world's first telephone line that stretched across 58 miles of the mother country. In 1877, the Ridge Telephone Company connected the French Coral to French Lake, also known as Brown Man Lake, right now. The world's first telephone company was completed barely a year after Alexander Graham Bell first spoke to Mr. Watson through his new invention, or we known as telephone, on March 10 of 1876. The Milton Mining Company operated the telephone line from the building that used to stand in French Coral at the site of historical markers sits today. The phone line primarily purpose was to serve the miners and the water companies. By 1880, the telephone company had created exchanges in most major US cities. However, it is common for callers to sit in the soundproof telephone booth by a point to make a call. Callers needed to shout to be heard because the technology to boost a person's voice over the telephone line had not been invented yet. Between 1894 to 1904, more than 6,000 independent phone companies set up business. The number of phones increased from 285,000 to 3.3 million. Long-distance phone lines crossed the nation in tens of millions of feet. Today, the French Coral is home to less than 100 residents. In the prime, the town was named for the stock pen that belongs to a French settler. Mining town across the Mother Lode took names created in similar ways. For Lone, a single woman in town. For a city's leader's daughter. For a heroine name in a book, or the name of a settler's hometown in the United States or abroad. The Milton Mining Company and its building was long gone from French Coral today. Visitors to the area can still see the Wells Fargo building built in 1853, the same year the mining company building was built. The French Coral is located at the Pleasant Valley Road, 4.5 miles west of Highway 49 and 3 miles east of Bridgestone Covered Bridge. The historical landmark is located in the Pleasant Valley Road in the center of town. first commercial telephone exchange, dated back in January 28 of 1878. The Boardman Building in New Haven became the site of the world's first commercial telephone exchange, the District Telephone Company of New Haven. The exchange was a brainchild of Civil War veteran and Telegraph Office manager George Coy, in partnership with Frederick Frost and Walter Lewis. Prior to this time, telephones invented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1875 were owned by private persons or businesses who leased telephones in pair to connect. For example, one's home with a business. They also needed to arrange for telegraph contractors to string wires between two locations. Coy created a Redicament telephone switchboard that allowed central office to connect to multiple persons, thus allowing each subscriber to take advantage of having only to buy one phone in order to connect to a potential infinite number of other subscribers. He built a switchboard with carriage bolts, handles from teapot lids, wires, and other spare parts. The 21 original subscribers to the exchange pays each $1.5 per month. All calls were made through the central office, where a telephone contractor connected the person initiating the call or the party that he or she wished to reach. Direct calling and the telephone numbers would not become common until the 1920s. Another important world's first occurred soon after, when on February 21, 1878, Coy's company printed what is now known to be the first ever telephone directory, listing 50 individuals and businesses in New Haven. The new directory was printed as one-page flyer. The directory in the University of Connecticut Libraries collection is one of the two remaining copies known to exist. Included in the list of names are Coy, Frost, and Lewis. Among the residential subscribers, in 1882, the District Telephone Company of New Haven changed its name to the Southern New England Telephone Company.
This is the succeeding alternation of telephone. 1876. Alexander Graham Bell called his assistant in 1876 from another room in his Boston laboratory. Bell was the first to obtain a patent in 1876 for an apparatus for transmitting vocal or other sound telegraphically, after experimenting with many primitive sound transmitters and receivers. 1882. The oldest telephone had large and bulky components that had to be arranged in the most appropriate manner. The pulpit telephone was produced with minor variations for several decades and was exported to several countries. 1892. The first telephone call. 1897. The second fundamental Bell patent for the telephone expired. Independent telephone companies established and independent manufacturing companies. 1902. The first Australian interstate calls between Mount Gambier and Nelson. 1910 to 1915. The US was the world leader of telephone density in the early 20th century. Phones in that era were connected by manual exchanges or switchboards. 67.4% of all telephones in the world were in the United States in 1910. The first transcontinental phone call occurred in 1915. Alexander Graham Bell phoned San Francisco from New York on the occasion of the San Francisco Panama Pacific International Exposition. 1905. 1956. Bell Labs began work on conference calling prototypes and the first transatlantic telephone cable was laid, setting the stage for easy global communication. 1964. At the New York World's Fair, the first video conference via a new device created by Bell Labs.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Telephones became rapidly indispensable to businesses, government, and household, and today, some of the most widely used small appliances.
Now, let's talk about the telephone. Introduction. A telephone is a telecommunication device. Permits two or more users to conduct a conversation when they are too far apart to be heard directly. So basically, the telephone is the early predecessor of the cell phones we use today. It converts sounds into electronic signals that are transmitted via cables and other communication channels to another telephone. In 1876, Scottish immigrant Alexander Graham Bell was the first to be granted a United States patent for a device that produced clearly intelligible replication of the human voice. So, Bell's education was largely received through numerous experiments in sounds and furthering of his father's work on visible speech for the deaf. This instrument was further developed by many others. Telephones we know today. One of the reasons to which we can credit this growth of telephones and its usage is the constant evolution of the device. In most telephone devices nowadays, you can find your personal directory, call recall facility, one-touch speed dial, time check, and many more such applications of customer convenience.
This is the short evolution of the mobile phones. The Motorola Dynatac 8000X was the world's first truly portable commercial mobile phone and cost $4,000 when it first went on sale in the US in 1983. It was Martin Cooper who placed the first call at AT&T Bell Labs from the streets of New York. Next is the Motorola Microtac Elite. It was the lightest and smallest mobile phone at the time of its release. The Motorola Microtac plastic antenna was merely for show and served no actual function. It was designed keeping in mind to fit in a shirt pocket. Phones from the 1994 era has the features of messaging and games. The Nokia 9000 Communicator, the very first product of the Communicator series from Nokia. The Nokia Communicator series of smartphones appeared as normal phones on the outside, and open in clamshell format to access a QWERTY keyboard and an LCD screen nearly as big as the device itself. For the 1995 to 1998 era, features of the phones includes emailing, vibrate alerts, and colored screens. The Nokia 3310. Nokia's 3310 model helped the company to dominate the mobile phone market from the mid-90s, selling millions of units. For the 2000 era, features of the phones has greatly improved. It includes WAP, tri-band, video calling, GPS navigation, predictive text, camera, polyphonic ringtones, MP3 player, Bluetooth, memory card, and MMS.
The iPhone. The launch of Apple's iPhone propelled smartphones into the mainstream thanks to the device's attractive design and intuitive user interface. It was the first commercial smartphone to use finger input as its main means of interaction instead of a stylus, keyboard, or keypad. This phone completely changed the definition of a smartphone. This phone runs on Apple's iOS mobile operating system. For 2007-2010, mobile phones have gotten smarter and smarter. The features from this era includes NFC,
capacitive touchscreen, mobile apps, and wireless charging. The Samsung Galaxy S2. The Samsung Galaxy S2 has additional features, expanded hardware, and a redesigned physique compared to its predecessor, the Samsung Galaxy S. The Samsung Galaxy S Android smartphone was first device of the third Android smartphone series produced by Samsung and the first major competitor to Apple's iPhone. For 2011 to 2014, smartphones became increasingly central to modern life, offering much more than just communication features. The features from this era includes voice control, fingerprint scanning, full HD screen, and heart rate monitoring. The iPhone 5. Apple's iPhone 5S was the best-selling phone of 2013. It was the first in the line to include a fingerprint recognition system built directly into the home button, which can be used to unlock the phone and authenticate App Store and iTunes Store purchases. The Samsung Galaxy S5. The Galaxy S5 received mostly positive reviews. The phone was praised for its display, hardware, camera, and battery life, but it was criticized for its plastic design, bloated software, and the inconsistent fingerprint scanner featured on the phone. For 2016 up to this present day, the global adaptation of 4G vastly improves video streaming and video calling capabilities. Screen sizes continue to grow to maximize the experience of these features. The new features from this era includes Iris Scanner and Apple and Android Pay. As years gone by, technology have gotten pretty more advanced and is getting out of control, especially mobile phones. From a simple cell phone, they came up with a much more advanced smartphone. These two are the proof that mobile phones have already evolved.
So that's it for our short documentation about evolution of communication from when did it start, who started it, and how our communication today become as easy as this, as we have now. So again, thank you for watching, and we hope that you've learned something from our documentary. Again, good day, everyone.